And, it's the old problem, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. It's in many ways, it's the exact same way we looked at the Chechnya issue with Russia, where are they, people being suppressed by the Russian government, or are they a bunch of terrorists and the Russian government's trying to restore order? So it really is the way you look at the issue. I was there in China when they had this big blow up in Xinjiang a few years ago, and riots basically, where it was very bloody riots where Muslims were attacking Han Chinese were attacking Muslims, and the only trouble the Washington Post got into with the Chinese government is when they thought we were reporting that story too sympathetic towards the Uyghurs, the Muslims. So it's a delicate area. If the question is whether the U.S. media doesn't approach that story with the proper balance, I think that's probably a fair question to ask.
The fairness and balance of the news stories?
Yeah, because the problem is we're not allowed to actually go there and independently report, is the main thing. And I'd argue the same thing with Tibet going on, where there have been I think over 100 self-immolations, people setting themselves on fire. The Chinese government says these people are being instigated to do this by the Dalai Lama. The Tibetans tell us from their exile groups that they're doing this because they're frustrated with Chinese government rule. It's hard for us because as foreigners, we're not allowed to just go there and walk around and talk to people. We're restricted from going there, so we're forced to get our information from exile groups and human rights groups and others. I've said this to the Chinese government foreign ministry myself in person in a press conference like this, when they were criticizing me for the way we cover the situation in Tibet and in Xinjiang, where the Uyghurs are. I said, I agree, we're not doing a good job reporting it, so why don't you let us go? Just let us go and don't follow us around and give us the freedom to go and report and do what we want, and maybe we can give more balanced stories about what the real situation is. But I think that's partly a problem of the government trying to control the flow of information. They want us to report the story as, terrorists attacking China. And they did a pretty good job. After September 11th, they wanted to have the Uyghur groups, the East Turkestan Liberation Organization, labeled a terrorist group. And I think George Bush did label them a terrorist group in exchange for Chinese cooperation after 9/11. And they wanted to make sure that they linked that group in China to Al-Qaeda. So it's a big question, because then there are some human rights groups in this country who say, no, that's a separate case, because that was a traditional Muslim homeland. A lot of Han Chinese migrants started moving into it, and now the Han Chinese actually outnumber the indigenous Muslim Uyghurs. And so it's a very complicated situation. I don't think we probably do a good enough job of explaining the kind of delicate balance there. But part of that, as I said, is we can't get there.
Yeah.